Imagine a world where a simple walk outside requires an army of highly trained agents, armored vehicles, and meticulous planning just to keep you safe. Sounds intense? Well, that's just another day in the life of some of the most heavily guarded presidents on the planet. Being the leader of a nation might sound glamorous, but it comes with some seriously heavy security baggage. Presidents are high-value targets, and their safety is priority number one. So which world leaders have the most intense security details watching their backs? I've counted down the top 10 that take presidential protection to a whole new level. As you can imagine, the stakes are sky high when it comes to keeping these VIPs safe. Assassinations, kidnappings, you name it, these are all very real threats that their security teams have to worry about 24/7. It's no wonder they go to such extreme lengths to make sure nothing happens to their boss. Of course, not all presidents need the same level of protection. It depends on a bunch of factors, like how stable their country is, how many enemies they have, and even their own personal preferences. Still, for the ones that do need that extra layer of security, it's fascinating to see just how far they'll go. From bulletproof cars to armies of bodyguards, we're talking Fort Knox level precautions here. So let's dive into the wild world of presidential security and check out which world leaders have the craziest protective details. Vladimir Putin, Russia. When it comes to Vladimir Putin's security detail, we're talking about a whole different level of protection. This guy doesn't just have your typical bodyguards and bulletproof cars. No, he's got an entire army watching his back. First off, there's the Federal Protective Service, or FSO for short. These guys are like the Secret Service on steroids. They're in charge of Putin's personal safety, and they take their job very seriously. We're talking about highly trained agents who are experts in everything from hand-to-hand combat to cybersecurity. They're always on high alert, scanning for any potential threats. But here's where it gets really interesting. Putin's motorcade is something straight out of a James Bond movie. He rolls around in a fleet of armored limousines that are built to withstand just about anything. These cars are like tanks on wheels, with bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, and even their own air supply in case of a chemical attack. And get this, rumor has it that Putin has a whole team of look-alike body doubles who ride in identical limos to throw off would-be attackers. Talk about playing mind games. Of course, it's not just about flashy cars and high-tech gadgets. Putin's security team is always thinking 10 steps ahead. They've got eyes and ears everywhere, monitoring social media, intercepting communications, and keeping tabs on any potential troublemakers. They even have a special unit that's solely dedicated to analyzing threats and coming up with contingency plans. But perhaps the most impressive part of Putin's security detail is the sheer manpower behind it. He's got an army of bodyguards that would make any Hollywood action star jealous. These guys are the cream of the crop, handpicked for their skills and loyalty. They go through intense training to make sure they're always ready for anything. And when Putin travels abroad, he brings his own little bubble of security with him. His team practically takes over entire hotels, sweeping every room for bugs and setting up secure communication lines. They even travel with a mobile trauma center just in case something goes wrong. So why does Putin need such an insane level of protection? Well, it's no secret that he's got his fair share of enemies. He's a controversial figure on the world stage, and there have been plenty of threats made against him over the years. Plus, as the leader of a country with a pretty turbulent history, he's always going to be a high-value target. But some people say it's not just about safety, it's about sending a message. Putin wants the world to know that he's untouchable, that he's the most powerful man in Russia and nobody can mess with him. His security detail is like a symbol of his strength and authority. Of course, all this protection comes at a price. Putin's security budget is estimated to be in the billions of dollars, and that's not even counting the cost of all those fancy cars and gadgets. But hey, when you're the president of Russia, I guess money is no object. So if you ever thought becoming a leader is a cakewalk, think again. These presidents are putting their lives on the line every single day, and they need the tightest security imaginable to keep them safe. But things get even crazier when we head over to North Korea. Kim Jong-un's security measures are on another level entirely. Kim Jong-un, North Korea. If you thought Putin's security was intense, wait until you hear about Kim Jong-un's setup in North Korea. This guy takes paranoia to a whole new level. First off, he's got the Guard Command, which is basically his own personal army. We're talking about 100,000 soldiers whose sole job is to protect Kim at all costs. These aren't your average rent-a-cops either. They're highly trained in everything from martial arts to weapons handling. But get this, Kim is so worried about someone trying to take him out that he even uses body doubles. Yep, you read that right. He's got a team of lookalikes who are trained to mimic his every move, right down to his haircut and mannerisms. They'll even show up to events in his place sometimes, just to keep everyone guessing. And when Kim does decide to grace the public with his presence, he rolls deep. His motorcades can stretch for miles, with dozens of armored vehicles and an army of bodyguards. These guys aren't messing around either. They're known for their intense training regimens, which include everything from endurance runs to live fire drills. But Kim's security detail doesn't just rely on brute force. They're also masters of misdirection. For example, when Kim travels by train, they'll send out multiple trains on different routes just to throw off any would-be attackers. And when he flies, he's got a fleet of decoy planes that take off before and after his own jet, just to keep everyone guessing. Of course, all of this security comes at a price. North Korea may be one of the poorest countries in the world, but they spare no expense when it comes to protecting their leader. Kim's security budget is estimated to be in the billions of dollars, which is a pretty staggering amount for a country where most people are struggling to put food on the table. But hey, that's the price of being a dictator, right? When you're ruling with an iron fist, you've got to watch your back at all times. And for Kim, that means surrounding himself with an army of bodyguards and enough decoys to fill a small country. So the next time you see footage of Kim Jong-Un waving to a crowd of adoring fans, just remember, there's a good chance that's not even the real Kim. It could be one of his many body doubles, trained to perfection in the art of looking like a pint-sized tyrant. But as wild as Kim's security might be, it's not the only show in town. Over in China, President Xi Jinping has got his own version of the Secret Service, and let's just say they mean business. Xi Jinping, China. Now, when it comes to China's main man, Xi Jinping, you know he's not messing around with his security. I mean, the guy's in charge of the most populous country on earth, so you better believe he's got some serious muscle watching his back. First off, there's the Central Security Bureau. These guys are like the Chinese version of the Secret Service, but with a lot more manpower. They're handpicked from the cream of the crop in the People's Liberation Army. And they go through some intense training to make sure they're always on their A-game. But Xi's security detail isn't just about brawn. They've got plenty of brains too. The Central Security Bureau is known for their high-tech gadgets and cutting-edge surveillance techniques. They've got eyes and ears everywhere, always on the lookout for any potential threats. And when Xi hits the road, he rolls in style. His motorcade is like a small army on wheels with dozens of armored vehicles and a sea of bodyguards. These guys don't just blend into the crowd either. They're decked out in full tactical gear with enough firepower to take on a small country. Just take a look at Xi's visit to Hong Kong back in 2017. The security presence was insane. We're talking about thousands of police officers, a no-fly zone over the city, and even a special drone squad to keep an eye on things from above. It was like something out of a movie. But Hong Kong is just the tip of the iceberg. Whenever Xi travels abroad, his security team goes into overdrive. They'll send advanced teams to scope out the location, checking for any potential security risks. They'll even bring in their own food and water, just to make sure nothing's been tampered with. And get this, Xi's security detail even has a special unit whose sole job is to analyze his bodyguard's poop. Yep, you read that right. They'll collect samples from the bodyguard's daily movements and test them for any signs of illness or contamination. It's all part of the job when you're protecting the most powerful man in China. But all of this security comes at a price. The Central Security Bureau's budget is a closely guarded secret, but you can bet it's not cheap. We're talking billions of dollars a year, all to keep one man safe. So why does Xi need such an insane level of protection? Well, it's not like he's Mr. Popular these days. He's faced his fair share of criticism both at home and abroad, and there are plenty of people who wouldn't mind seeing him out of the picture. Plus, as the leader of a country with a pretty complicated history, he's always going to be a high-value target. But some people say it's not just about safety, it's about sending a message. Xi wants the world to know that he's the top dog in China and he's not going anywhere. His security detail is like a symbol of his power and authority. Of course, all of this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to presidential security. But if you think China's the only one with an army of bodyguards, Think again. Wait until you hear about the insane security measures taken by a certain world leader who calls 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue home. Let's just say the commander-in-chief of the free world is a little more than just the man in the big chair. Joe Biden, USA. If you thought the security measures for other world leaders were intense, just wait until you hear about what goes into protecting the President of the United States. When it comes to Joe Biden's safety, no expense is spared. At the heart of it all is the Secret Service. These guys are the best of the best, hand-picked to guard the most powerful man in the world. They're trained in everything from marksmanship to defensive driving, and they're always on high alert. But it's not just about manpower. The President's ride, known as the Beast, is a fortress on wheels. This thing is built to withstand just about anything, with armor plating that can stop a rocket-propelled grenade and windows that can resist armor-piercing bullets. It's even got its own air supply in case of a chemical attack, and when Biden takes to the skies, he's got Air Force One at his disposal. This isn't just any old plane, it's a flying White House, complete with a conference room, a medical suite, and even a gym. Plus, it's got some of the most advanced defense systems in the world, including the ability to jam enemy radar and launch flares to throw off heat-seeking missiles. But the security measures don't stop there. The White House itself is like a fortress with a perimeter fence, armed guards, and a high-tech surveillance system that would make James Bond jealous. And wherever Biden goes, a team of Secret Service agents is never far behind, scanning the crowds for potential threats. Of course, all of this protection comes with a hefty price tag. The Secret Service alone has an annual budget of over $2 billion, and that's not even counting the cost of all the fancy gadgets and vehicles. But hey, when you're the leader of the free world, I guess money is no object. So why does Biden need such an insane level of security? Well, it's no secret that being the president is a high-risk job. There have been plenty of attempts on the lives of past presidents, and in today's world, the threats are only getting more sophisticated. From lone wolf attackers to state-sponsored terrorists, there's no shortage of people who would love to take a shot at the commander-in-chief. But it's not just about physical threats. In the age of cyber warfare, the president is also a prime target for hackers and online attackers. That's why the White House has its own team of cybersecurity experts working around the clock to keep Biden's digital life locked down tight. At the end of the day, protecting the president is a 24/7 job that requires constant vigilance and a whole lot of resources. It's not just about keeping Biden safe, it's about ensuring the stability and security of the entire country. Because let's face it, if something happens to the president, it's not just his problem, it's everyone's problem. So the next time you see Biden surrounded by a team of stone-faced Secret Service agents, just remember, those guys are the only thing standing between him and a world of danger. But as impressive as the US security measures might be, they're nothing compared to what's happening in Saudi Arabia. You won't believe the lengths the Saudi crown prince is going to protect himself in this technological era. Guarding Mohammed bin Salman is a whole other kind of challenge, with cyber threats lurking around every corner. And rumor has it, he's got some pretty out there tricks up his sleeve to stay safe. Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia. If you thought the US president's security was over the top, just wait until you hear about Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. This guy's not messing around when it comes to staying safe. First off, there's the Royal Guard Regiment. These aren't your average rent-a-cops. They're highly trained, heavily armed, and totally dedicated to protecting the royal family. And under MBS's rule, they've been getting some serious upgrades. We're talking state-of-the-art weapons, top-of-the-line surveillance tech, and enough armored vehicles to make a small army jealous. MBS is determined to turn the Royal Guard into a world-class security force, and he's sparing no expense to do it. But in today's world, it's not just about boots on the ground. MBS knows that the biggest threats to his safety might come from behind a keyboard, not a gun. That's why he's been pouring money into cybersecurity too. He's got teams of hackers and tech experts working around the clock to keep his digital life locked down tight. They're monitoring social media, tracking potential threats online, and even hacking into the phones of his enemies. It's like something out of a spy movie. And if that wasn't enough, MBS is also planning to expand his personal security team to a whopping 1,000 members. That's right, 1,000 people whose sole job is to keep one man safe. It's an insane level of protection, but when you're the most powerful man in the Middle East, I guess you can't be too careful. Of course, all of this security comes at a price. The Saudi government is notoriously secretive about its spending, but you can bet that MBS's protection detail doesn't come cheap. We're talking billions of dollars a year, all to keep one man out of harm's way. But for MBS, it's not just about staying safe, it's about sending a message. He wants the world to know that he's the top dog in Saudi Arabia, and he's not going anywhere. His security team is like a symbol of his power and influence. And let's be real, with all the enemies he's made over the years, he's probably going to need every last one of those bodyguards. MBS has ruffled a lot of feathers in his rise to power, and there are plenty of people who would love to see him taken down a peg or two. But for now, he's untouchable. With his army of guards and his high-tech security measures, MBS is practically invincible. It's like he's living in his own little bubble, completely cut off from the dangers of the outside world. So the next time you see a picture of MBS surrounded by a sea of heavily armed bodyguards, just remember, that's what it takes to be the most powerful man in the Middle East. It's not just about having money or influence, it's about being untouchable, no matter who or what comes your way. But if you thought Saudi Arabia was intense, wait until you hear about the insane measures taken by one world leader who's no stranger to death threats and assassination attempts. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has security on lock. Narendra Modi, India. When it comes to India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, you know he's not taking any chances with his safety. I mean, the guy's got a pretty high-profile job, and he's not exactly short on enemies. That's where the Special Protection Group comes in. The SPG is like India's version of the Secret Service, but with a serious budget to match. We're talking $48 million a year, all to keep Modi safe and sound. And trust me, they're not messing around. First off, there's the convoy. When Modi hits the road, he's rolling deep. We're talking armored BMWs, Mercedes Maybachs, the works. These cars are built like tanks, with enough armor to stop a rocket-propelled grenade. And that's not even counting the decoy cars, just to keep potential attackers guessing. But it's not just about the wheels. Modi's got a small army watching his back 24/7. The SPG is made up of over 3,000 elite officers, all trained in the latest security tactics. They're armed to the teeth and ready for anything. And when Modi takes to the skies, he's got his own fleet of helicopters and planes, all equipped with the latest defense systems. I'm talking about flares, chaff, and the works. It's like something out of a James Bond movie. But even with all that hardware, Modi's security team isn't taking any chances. They're constantly monitoring social media and other online platforms, looking for any potential threats. And if they find something, they're not afraid to act. Just take a look at what happened during the recent protests in India. Modi's security team was on high alert, working around the clock to keep him safe. They even had snipers posted on rooftops, just in case. Of course, all of this protection doesn't come cheap. Modi's security budget is one of the highest in the world, and it's only getting bigger. But when you're the leader of a country with over 1 billion people, I guess you can't be too careful. And it's not just about keeping Modi safe, it's about sending a message. India is a rising power on the world stage, and Modi wants everyone to know it. His security detail is like a symbol of India's strength and resilience. But even with all that protection, being the Prime Minister of India is still a pretty risky job. The country has a long history of political violence, and there are plenty of people who wouldn't mind seeing Modi out of the picture. That's why Modi's security team is always on high alert, especially when he's traveling abroad. They'll send advanced teams to scope out the location, checking for any potential security risks. They'll even bring in their own food and water, just to make sure nothing's been tampered with. And if something does happen, well, let's just say the SPG isn't messing around. These guys are trained to react in a split second, neutralizing any threat before it can even get close to Modi. So the next time you see a picture of Modi surrounded by a wall of bodyguards, just remember that's what it takes to be the Prime Minister of India. It's not just about having power or influence, it's about staying alive long enough to use it. But if you thought India was intense, wait until you hear about the insane measures taken by the President of Turkey. This guy's security detail is so hardcore, they've got their own nickname, the Mustachiers. And trust me, they've earned it. These guys are known for their burly mustaches and their even burlier tactics. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey. You thought the other presidents had intense security? Just wait until you hear about Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey. This guy's got a security detail that's so hardcore, they've earned their own nickname, the Mustachiers. And trust me, it's not because of their impeccable grooming habits. These burly, mustached bodyguards are Erdogan's first line of defense, and they take their job seriously, like really seriously. In 2017, during a visit to Washington, D.C., they made headlines for attacking protesters outside the Turkish embassy. It was a pretty wild scene, with the mustachiers throwing punches and kicking people left and right. But that's just a day in the life for these guys. They're always on high alert, ready to jump into action at a moment's notice. And it's not just about brute force either. Erdogan's security team is packing some serious heat, with Turkish-made Yavuz 16 pistols and MPT-76 rifles as their weapons of choice. When Erdogan hits the road, he rolls deep. His convoy can include up to 12 luxury cars, all armored to the teeth. And on high alert days, he's got backup too. We're talking up to 3,000 snipers posted around the area. Talk about overkill. But I guess when you're the president of Turkey, you can never be too careful. Erdogan's got his fair share of enemies, both at home and abroad. In 2016, there was even an attempted coup against him, which he managed to thwart with the help of his loyal security forces. Since then, he's been doubling down on his protection. In 2017, he brought a small army with him on a trip to Greece. 100 Turkish officers and 2 riot police squads. The Greeks had to deploy 3,000 of their own officers just to keep the peace. It's like a high-stakes game of chess, but with guns and mustaches. They're the kings on Erdogan's chessboard. These guys are handpicked for their loyalty and their intimidating presence. They're not just bodyguards. They're a symbol of Erdogan's power and influence. Of course, all of this security comes at a price. Erdogan's protection detail doesn't come cheap, and the Turkish government isn't exactly known for its transparency when it comes to spending. But hey, when you're the top dog in a country of over 80 million people, I guess you can afford to splurge on a few extra bodyguards. So the next time you see a picture of Erdogan surrounded by a wall of mustaches, just remember, those guys mean business. They're not just there to look tough, although they definitely do. They're there to keep the president of Turkey safe, no matter what it takes. Emmanuel Macron, France. Emmanuel Macron, the young and charismatic president of France, knows a thing or two about security threats. In recent years, he's had to deal with everything from massive protests to terrorist attacks. And let's just say he's had to step up his security game in a big way. Enter the GSPR, aka the security group for the presidency of the Republic. These guys are like the French version of the Secret Service, but with a bit more je ne sais quoi. They're tasked with protecting Macron 24/7, whether he's at home in the Élysée Palace or traveling abroad. And trust me, they've got their work cut out for them. France has seen a surge in internal threats lately, from the Yellow Vest protests to the rise of extremism. In response, Macron has had to seriously beef up his security detail. We're talking more bodyguards, more armored vehicles, more everything. He's even got a special unit dedicated to monitoring social media for potential threats. Because in today's world, a single tweet can be just as dangerous as a bullet. But it's not just about manpower. Macron's security team is also armed with some seriously high-tech gadgets. Think drones, facial recognition software, and even a special panic room in case of an attack. Of course, all of this security comes at a cost. Macron's detail is one of the most expensive in the world, with a budget of over 100 million euros per year. But when you're the leader of a country with a history of political upheaval, I guess you can't put a price on peace of mind. Interestingly, Macron's approach to security is a bit different than some of his predecessors. Rather than just beefing up his own protection, he's also focused on addressing the root causes of the threats he faces. Take the Yellow Vest protests, for example. Instead of just cracking down on the protesters, Macron actually met with their leaders and tried to address their concerns. He even launched a great national debate to give ordinary citizens a chance to voice their grievances. Of course, not everyone was happy with his response. Some accused him of being too soft, while others said he was just trying to distract from his own political problems. But you've got to give the guy credit for at least trying to tackle the issue head-on. At the end of the day, being the president of France is a tough gig. You've got to balance the need for security with the desire for transparency and accessibility. And in a country with a long history of revolution and unrest, that's no easy task. But Macron seems to be doing his best to walk that tightrope. He's got a top-notch security team watching his back, but he's also not afraid to get out there and engage with the people, even if it means taking a few risks along the way. So the next time you see a picture of Macron surrounded by a phalanx of bodyguards, just remember, it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. And in today's crazy world, you can never be too careful. But for all the high-tech gadgets and beefy bodyguards employed by world leaders like Macron, there's a whole other level of presidential security that often goes unnoticed. I'm talking about the behind-the-scenes measures that keep our fearless leaders safe from harm. From armored luxury cars to advanced surveillance systems, the world of VIP protection is constantly evolving to stay one step ahead of the bad guys, and the psychological tricks used to keep attackers at bay, let's just say it's enough to make your head spin. Donald Trump, USA. When it comes to presidential security budgets, Donald Trump blew everyone else out of the water. We're talking a whopping $120 million spent on keeping him safe during his 4 years in office. That's more than any other president in history. As you can imagine, a lot of that cash went towards his transportation. When Trump hit the road, he didn't just have a couple black SUVs trailing behind. Oh no, he rolled with a full-on motorcade, complete with dozens of vehicles, a mobile command center, and an ambulance, just in case. And then there was the beast, Trump's personal ride. This wasn't your grandpa's old Cadillac. It was a heavily armored, custom-built Cadillac limo that could practically withstand a nuclear blast. Rumor has it, it even had a supply of the president's own blood type on board. Talk about being prepared for anything. But of course, all those fancy cars and extra precautions didn't always keep Trump out of harm's way. In 2020, while he was on the campaign trail, a man actually shot at his motorcade as it was leaving the White House. Thankfully, the bulletproof windows held up and no one was hurt. Still, it just goes to show that even with the tightest security, there's always some risk involved. Another close call came during a rally in 2016, when a protester tried to rush the stage while Trump was speaking. His Secret Service agents sprang into action, literally surrounding Trump in a human shield as they ushered him off stage. The whole thing was over in a matter of seconds, but it definitely got everyone's heart racing. Naturally, Trump's security team had to be on their A-game 24/7, both at home and abroad. Whenever he traveled overseas, they worked with local law enforcement to secure the area and map out escape routes, just in case. They even had special pre-advanced teams that would fly out ahead of time to scope out the location and identify any potential threats. But it wasn't just physical security they had to worry about. In today's digital age, cyber attacks are a very real concern. That's why Trump's team included special agents dedicated to monitoring online chatter and tracking down any potential threats. They even had the capability to launch offensive cyber attacks of their own, if necessary. Unsurprisingly, all of this security came with a pretty hefty price tag. But for Trump, it was worth every penny. After all, being the leader of the free world isn't exactly a low-risk job, and let's be real, the man loves to make an entrance. Why roll up in a boring old town car when you can show up in a literal tank? So there you have it, a glimpse into the crazy world of Donald Trump's presidential security. It's a far cry from the days of John Quincy Adams, who used to skinny dip in the Potomac River every morning. But hey, times have changed. And speaking of changing times, the way world leaders approach security is constantly evolving.